Dust always moved on Nareen 4. It slid like soft smoke across the red plains. It hissed along the edges of the ironwood fences, and it crept under every door in the village of Siva Ridge. Inside a small clay house at the far edge, a young alien woman named Leora woke before sunrise, as she always did, to beat the dust. She pulled herself upright, gripped the smooth rails along her wall, and slid into her chair. The chair was old. One wheel squeaked. The cushion had a thin tear on the side where the fabric curled like a dry leaf. She checked the little pot on the fire pit. Still warm. She poured herself a cup of bitter leaf tea and stared at the pale sky through the doorway. Leora was paralyzed from the waist down. She had been this way since childhood, after a fever that had spread through the colony one hard winter. On Nareen 4, strength was a rule, not a choice. You joined a work band at 12. You earned a family license by showing you could provide. The council said, "Those who cannot stand cannot carry a future." It sounded like wisdom in public speeches. In private rooms, it sounded like a door slamming shut. Leora had applied for a family license anyway. She had rolled into the council hall with her head up and her hair braided with silver wire, the way her mother once wore it. The elders didn't shout. They didn't laugh. They simply reminded her of the law and stamped the rejection seal in gray wax. The mark looked like a stone. It felt like one too, pressed against her chest every night. But every morning she kept her home tidy, swept the dust, boiled tea, and spoke to her window as if it were a friend. Sometimes children ran past and waved. Sometimes women stopped by and traded herbs or gossip. Mostly, people were kind from a distance. They were careful to keep hope out of their eyes when they looked at Leora, because hope could embarrass a person like her. Hope suggested she still wanted things. She did. She wanted a family. She wanted laughter in her home. She wanted to hold a child and say, "You are loved." And she wanted someone to say it back to her with the sleepy trust only family can have. On the morning it began, the wind carried a new sound across the flats. It was not the whistle of dust or the low thump of water engines or the clatter of traders' carts. It was a roar that rose from far away, broke into coughs of metal, and then screamed like a burning star. Birds burst from the wind trees. The ground trembled. Leora gripped her wheels and rolled to the door. A line of fire cut across the sky and vanished behind the low hills to the north. A heartbeat later, the shock reached the village. Air pushing, jars rattling, a baby crying from 2 houses over. "Ship!" someone yelled. "A ship!" The first voices were excited. The next ones were afraid. Siva Ridge had never been a port. They were farmers, water engineers, small craftspeople. The space lanes passed high above and far away. Only patrol ships came close, and then only to remind them they were a small piece of a large order. Leora felt another tremor, closer this time, like a giant exhale under the ground. She knew what the council would do. They would send guards. They would warn everyone to stay inside. They would speak of danger and compliance. She also knew what she would do. She would not sit at her window and watch. She packed a small satchel, water flask, clean cloth, resin bandages, pain powder. Leora was not a licensed healer, but she had learned the basics because people who live alone learn to keep themselves alive. She pulled on her outer cloak, checked her chair's axles, and rolled out into the gray light. Dust tugged lightly at the wheels as she crossed the yard. She paused, took a breath, and then angled down the path toward the North Hills. At the village edge, 3 women stood blocking the trail. "Leora, go back," said Reme, the baker's wife. "The council will not like. If there are hurt people, they will like me less for letting them die." Leora answered softly. Her throat felt tight, but her voice was steady. "Please, I have to see." Another woman touched Reem's arm. "Let her pass," she murmured. "Her heart is strong. Stronger than some who can run." They stepped aside. Leora pushed on. The path up the hills was narrow and twisted, with roots like knuckled ropes across the dirt. Leora knew where the roots were. She had practiced this route on quiet evenings when the sky was lavender and the world felt possible. She leaned forward, lifted the front wheel over a root, then the other, and used her arms like levers to climb. Her shoulders burned. Sweat tickled her neck. Twice she had to stop and breathe until the sky stopped spinning. Twice she almost turned back. And then, at the top, she smelled it. Hot metal, cracked fuel, and the sharp tang of burned air. The crash site lay in a shallow ravine, where thorn brush grew in thick brown mats. A small ship had furrowed a long, raw wound through the plants and finally slammed into a rock shelf. Smoke coiled in slow, tired spirals from the rear engines. One wing hung at a split angle like a broken arm. There were deep footprints and drag marks in the dirt near the open hatch, as if someone had crawled or pulled someone else to safety. "Hello," Leora called. Her voice thinned in the wind. She swallowed. "Is anyone hurt?" A low groan answered from behind a scrub tree. She rolled that way, careful of the rough ground, and found a human lying on his side, arm clamped tight to his ribs. He was tall, but his strength was dimmed by shock. Dust streaked his face and dark hair. A jagged cut ran across his temple. His eyes opened at the sound of her chair. They were tired, wary, and, when they focused on her, surprised. "Don't move," Leora said, raising her hands to show she meant no harm. "I have water. I have bandages. My name is Leora. I live in the village." He tried to sit. Pain folded him into a gasp. He coughed, and a little blood darkened his lip. "Ethan," he said. His voice was rough. "Human Explorer Corps, single father." "My daughter." He squeezed his eyes shut as the world tilted under him. "My daughter is in the ship." The ravine seemed to narrow around Leora. "How old?" "7, he said. "Name is Mira. She's okay, I think, scared, breathing. I needed air." "I meant to go back, fell." Leora's heart hammered so hard it hurt. She slid from her chair to the ground, braced her back against a rock, and levered. With a slow, ugly grunt, she pushed Ethan up enough to wedge a folded cloak under his shoulders. "Stay," she said. "I will get her." He grabbed her hand. His fingers were warm and trembling. "The council, your people, cross contact." "I know what they say," Leora answered. "I also know a child is in there." She pulled herself back into the chair, rolled to the hatch, and called again. "Mira, it's Leora. I live nearby. Your father sent me. I'm coming inside, but I will talk the whole time so you're not afraid." A small voice, thin as a reed, floated out from the shadows. "I'm here." The ship's interior smelled like hot plastic and fear. Leora's eyes adjusted. She saw a little nest made in the corner. 2 blankets, a soft toy with long floppy ears, a small packet of emergency biscuits. In the nest, a girl with dark hair and bright wet eyes hugged her knees. "You're an angel," the girl said, almost to herself. "I'm a neighbor," Leora said. "I'm also very dusty." "That means we match," she offered her hand. "May I help you to your father?" Mira nodded and scooted forward. When she stood, she saw the chair for the first time. Her eyes went to Leora's legs, then back up, curious but not cruel. "Do your legs hurt?" she asked. "Only when they are bored," Leora said and smiled. "Today they are not bored." Back outside, Leora helped Mira down the ramp step by careful step, then guided her across the dirt to Ethan. The moment he saw his daughter, his breath loosened. He lifted his good arm. Mira folded into him and finally began to cry with relief, the way children do only when the danger is over. "You're safe," Ethan whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "You're safe. I'm sorry I fell." "I'm sorry." Leora gave them water and a few sips for the dizziness. She wrapped a clean cloth around Ethan's bleeding temple, pressed gently until the flow slowed, and checked his ribs with calm, steady fingers. He winced when she touched his side. "Likely cracked," she said. "Maybe more. We will need a proper healer." Ethan swallowed. "Will your people help us?" Leora looked toward the village. She knew the answer was complicated. The council feared trouble with the patrol. They feared any incident that could bring inspections or fines. They liked order, rules, and quiet farms that paid their shares on time. But the villagers themselves, ordinary people who cooked and sewed and worked the water engines, were kinder than the laws written over them. "They will help," she said, because she chose to believe it. "I will make them help." Ethan studied her face as if weighing the truth of her words against the pain in his own body. Whatever he saw made him nod once. He was a soldier and a father. He understood what courage looked like even when it was seated in an old chair with a squeaky wheel. "Thank you." "Leora," he said. "Thank me later," she replied. And then she did something the council would call foolish. She reached out, squeezed his hand, and held it a heartbeat longer than strangers are supposed to. The contact steadied both of them. They needed to move before the day grew hot and the dust thickened. Leora strapped a rope from the ship's storage around the back of her chair and tied the other end around the torn wing's brace. With her arms and the slight slope, She could use the ship as an anchor to lower Ethan slowly down the short embankment toward a flatter path. It was awkward and slow, a dance invented on the spot, but they managed. Mira walked alongside, her small hands ready to catch items or steady the rope when it snagged on a rock. 3 people, 1 plan. Halfway to the village, the first guards appeared on the ridgeline, 3 figures in gray cloaks with bright badges at their collars. Their silhouettes were sharp against the pale sky. They didn't call out yet. They watched. Leora felt their eyes like cold coins pressed against her skin. She kept moving. She did not look up. Reem, the baker's wife, met them at the edge of the fields with 2 others. Without a word, she handed Leora a sack of clean cloths and a flask of sweet water. "For the child," she said. Her voice carried no fear now, only a quick, practical warmth. "The healer's apprentice is on the way." "Thank you," Leora said. Her cheeks felt hot. Gratitude does that. They brought Ethan to Leora's small house because it was closest and because the guards had not yet tried to stop them. Inside, Mira sat on the cushion by the fire pit and wrapped her hands around the warm cup Reem offered. Ethan lay on Leora's narrow bed, teeth clenched against the jolts of pain. Leora crushed a little pain powder into water and held it to his lips. He hesitated only a second before drinking, trusting a stranger because his daughter sat safe in the same room. Trust is sometimes a choice you make for someone small who is watching you. "Your home is neat," Ethan said when the pain dulled enough to let words through. He looked around at the simple shelves, the racks of dried herbs, the careful tools lined up in a row. "You did all this yourself?" "Yes," Leora said. "I am not allowed to do many things under the law, so I learned to do the things the law forgot to claim." Mira's gaze drifted to a little mobile hanging from the ceiling, thin, metal leaves that whispered when the wind moved. "It sounds like rain," she said. "It does," Leora answered. "I made it to remember the last good storm." For a few minutes the room was quiet except for soft breathing and the wind's voice at the door. It could have been any safe morning with tea and small talk if not for the thin thread of fear tugging at the edge of every thought. The doorframe darkened. 3 shadows stretched across the floor. The guard stepped inside without asking. The leader, a tall woman with a scar under her eye, scanned the room the way a hawk scans a field. "Human," she said to Ethan, not unkind, but without warmth. "You will come with us to the council hall. The rules are clear." Mira flinched and pressed closer to her father. Ethan pushed himself up on one elbow and winced as pain stabbed his side. Leora rolled forward until her chair's front wheels touched the guard's boots. "He is hurt," Leora said. "He needs a healer before a hearing. The child is afraid. The law," the guard began. "The law also says we aid the injured, even outsiders," Leora cut in, heart pounding. Her voice stayed steady, like a hand on a shaking shoulder. "You say those words at every harvest. We show our strength by how we carry the weak." "I have listened since I was a child." The guard's scar tugged as if she might frown, might smile, might do neither. She looked at Ethan, then at Mira, then at Leora's chair, at the worn wheels and the clean hands on the rims. "You took a risk," the guard said. "So did he. Coming back for air instead of leaving his child alone," Leora answered. "So do you every time you choose mercy when no one is looking." A long breath moved through the room as if even the dust itself were waiting. Finally, the guard nodded toward the door. "The healer first," she said. "Then the council." Ethan sagged back, relief shaking through him. Mira let out a breath she had been holding for years, it seemed. Leora closed her eyes for a heartbeat and felt something she had not felt in months. Not victory, not safety, but a thin, strong strand of hope threading itself through the day. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was looking at her in a new way. Not like a stranger and not like a patient, but with the clear, simple gratitude of a father who has watched someone protect his child. "Thank you," he said again. The words were quiet but full. Leora reached for the kettle. "Drink," she said, because care is often a small instruction given at the right time. She poured for Ethan, then for Mira, then for the guard whose scar caught the light when she finally accepted the cup. The room warmed a little. Outside, the village was already changing. People gathered in clusters, eyes wide, whispers quick. Some looked toward Leora's house with fear, some with curiosity, some with the stubborn kindness that grows in hard soil. Above them all, the dust kept moving, as if the world did not know it had shifted. By noon, the healer arrived to bind Ethan's ribs and salve the cut on his temple. Reem brought fresh bread and a sweet made from candied root. Mira fell asleep against her father's arm, the toy with the floppy ears tucked under her chin. Leora sat by the door listening to the wind, watching the guards take turns at the gate, and feeling the quiet rhythm of a home that, for the first time in a long time, did not feel like it belonged to only one person. When the sun leaned westward, the guard with the scar touched the door frame. "It is time," she said. "The council waits." Leora glanced at Ethan. He nodded, jaw tight. He would stand if he had to. He would crawl if standing broke him. That was what fathers did. "I will come with you," Leora said. The guard hesitated. "You are not needed." "I am the reason he is here," Leora replied. "And he is the reason a child is safe in my house. That sounds like need to me." The guard studied her for a moment longer, then stepped aside. Leora rolled out into the evening light. The path to the hall glowed pale under the sky. The villagers parted like water around the small procession. Guards, a limping human with his chin set, a child holding his hand, and a woman in a worn chair with her head held high. The wind trees murmured as if telling each other a story. Leora felt the old rejection seal press cold against her memory, but it did not crush her now. Not after this morning. Not after a child's angel and a father's thank you. The world had rules. She knew them. But the world also had people. Sometimes people were larger than rules. At the foot of the council steps, she paused and looked up at the broad doors. They were carved with the colony's history. Ships landing, crops rising, hands building. There were no carvings of a woman in a chair. Leora decided there would be a story anyway. The doors opened. The elders waited inside. The room smelled like wax and old wood and decisions. Leora pushed her wheels forward and entered with Ethan and Mira beside her. The guard at their back and Hope, thin but strong, leading them all. The council hall was silent when Leora entered. The wide stone walls shimmered faintly with the heat of the setting sun, and the 12 elders sat like carved statues behind their long silver table. Every face was calm, but Leora could feel their judgment before a single word was spoken. Ethan stood beside her, tall but pale. His ribs were still bound with fresh bandages, and every breath looked like it hurt. Little Mira held his hand tightly, half hidden behind his arm. The guard with the scar stood near the door, watching without expression. The eldest of the council, Elder Theron, leaned forward. "You brought a human into our homes," he said. "You ignored quarantine law. You ignored the warning beacons. Do you know what danger this could bring to our colony?" Leora lifted her chin. "I know he was dying," she said softly. "And I know his daughter would have died with him if I had obeyed silence." A low murmur spread through the room. Theron's gray eyes narrowed. "The laws exist to protect us from outsiders. The last time humans came, they took our minerals and left us poisoned fields." Ethan's voice came, steady but low. "That was over a century ago. I am not here for your minds. I came looking for a safe landing and clean air for my child. My ship malfunctioned in orbit." Another elder whispered to the rest, "He could be lying." Mira stepped forward, her little voice trembling but brave. "He doesn't lie. He's my dad. He fixes things. He fixed our ship when it broke. He just needs a little more time." Some elders softened, others frowned. But before Theron could speak again, Leora rolled forward. "If you fear infection or trouble, test him. Keep me under watch if you must. But do not punish the innocent for my compassion." A pause, a long one. Then Elder Theron sighed and said, "Very well. The human will stay under supervision. The woman, Leora, will take responsibility for his behavior until the patrol arrives. If there is any disturbance, she will face the council again." Leora bowed her head. "I accept." Ethan turned toward her in surprise. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "I already did." That night the air grew colder than it had in months. A thin frost glazed the window frames of Leora's small house. Ethan slept on her bed again, still weak, while Mira curled up beside him. Leora sat by the small fire, arms folded, watching the light dance across the walls. The silence felt heavy, but not lonely. For the first time, her home felt alive. She could hear soft breathing, the whisper of fabric when Mira turned in her sleep, the faint hum of life that every empty night had missed. Ethan stirred, opening his eyes. "You're still awake?" "I'm used to it," she said. "The nights here are long." He struggled to sit up, then gave up halfway. You risked a lot today. Leora's lips curved in a small smile. I've been told that before. I mean it, he said. You stood against your own people, why? She looked at him quietly for a moment. Because I know what it is to be treated as less. When you were lying there in the dirt, I saw how they would have looked at you, the same way they look at me. Ethan met her gaze. Back on Earth, I was an engineer. After my wife died, Mira was all I had. People pitied me, said I shouldn't take her on deep space assignments, but I didn't want her growing up thinking broken meant useless. Leora turned her face toward the fire. The words hit her heart like a slow pulse. Broken meant useless. It was exactly what the council had told her since childhood. And here was a human, broken and wounded, yet still strong enough to love his child and fight for her. You fixed your ship, she said softly. Can you fix people too? He smiled. I try. Outside, the wind rose. Dust hissed against the door. Ethan pulled the blanket over Mira's shoulders and stared into the fire. She likes you, you know, he said. She hasn't smiled like that in a long time. She's brave, Leora said. She reminds me that even small hearts can carry a world inside them. For a while, neither spoke. The crackling fire filled the silence. Then Ethan said quietly, if the council calls the patrol, they might separate us. They don't want humans mixing with locals. Leora's hands tightened on her lap. They won't listen to reason. Then I'll give them something stronger than reason, he said. A promise. The next morning, word spread fast through the colony. The human had stayed the night in the paralyzed woman's home. Some were outraged. Others were curious. A few even smiled, though quietly behind closed doors. Children whispered that the Sky Man had brought stars in his pockets. Traders claimed his ship was full of gold. The council sent another inspection team. But when the guards entered, they found only Leora cooking breakfast, Mira humming by the window, and Ethan helping repair a broken water pipe beside the house. The guard captain looked at the three of them and frowned. You've already made yourself part of the village, he said. Maybe the village just needed more people, Leora replied. That night, as frost crept again along the window glass, Ethan sat by the fire cleaning a metal fragment from his ship. I'll leave when I can, he said, before your council decides I'm too much trouble. Leora felt a sharp ache at his words. She tried to hide it behind calm eyes. It is safer that way, she said. He looked up. Safer doesn't mean right. Her heart skipped. She turned away, staring into the flames. Ethan, your world is far. Mine has rules. Even friendship is dangerous here. He leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. Then let me make a promise. When I leave this world, I'll come back, not as a stranger, but as someone who belongs here. With you. With Mira. With anyone who chooses kindness over fear. Leora blinked fast, her breath trembling. You don't even know what that means for us. I don't need to, he said. You risked your life for me and my child. I won't forget that. I keep my promises. Outside, the cold wind carried a faint hum, the signal beacon of an approaching patrol ship. Blue lights flickered on the far horizon. The council had sent for them sooner than expected. Leora's pulse raced. They're coming, she whispered. You must hide, Ethan shook his head. No more hiding. If they take me, they'll take Mira too. I won't let them decide what kind of man I am. He walked to the door and looked at the distant lights. When they ask why I stayed, I'll tell them, because an alien woman with broken legs had more courage than 100 soldiers. Leora's eyes burned. She rolled to the doorway beside him. And if they punish me? He turned toward her, a faint smile in his eyes despite the fear. Then I'll come back for you, no matter what it costs. The wind howled through the village like a warning. Guards shouted in the distance. The blue glow of the patrol ship grew brighter. Leora looked at him one last time, and something unspoken passed between them. Not love yet, but something strong enough to build it, she whispered. Then I'll wait. And as the night filled with the roar of engines and the promise of trouble, Leora realized that for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of what waited beyond the door. The council hall was silent when Leora rolled in beside Ethan and his little daughter, Mira. The elders sat in their tall chairs, faces like cold stone. The air smelled of dust and judgment. Ethan's ribs were tightly bandaged, and every breath looked painful. Still, he stood tall, his hand resting on Mira's shoulder. Leora sat in her wheelchair beside them, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. Elder Theron, the oldest of the council, spoke first. "You broke our law," he said coldly. "You brought a human into our village. You touched him. You cared for him. Do you want the sickness of outsiders here?" Leora's voice was soft but clear. "He was dying," she said. "His child was alone. What sickness is greater than turning away from those who need help?" A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. Some agreed with her. Some looked down in fear. The guards shifted uneasily at the door. Ethan stepped forward despite the pain. "I came by accident," he said. "My ship crashed. I asked for nothing but air and water. Leora saved my life and my daughter's." Theron's eyes narrowed. "Humans are dangerous. You take, you destroy, then you leave." Ethan's face stayed calm. "Maybe some did, but not all. I have no weapons, no soldiers, only a broken ship and a little girl. We mean no harm." Mira peeked out from behind her father and whispered, "Please, we just wanted to live." The room fell quiet. The child's small voice was more powerful than any argument. Elder Theron finally sighed. "The human will stay until his ship is fixed. He will live under watch. Leora, you are responsible for him. If he breaks our laws, you will answer." "I understand," Leora said. Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. Ethan turned toward her, surprised. "You shouldn't risk this," he whispered. "I already did," she replied gently. That night, cold wind crept through the thin walls of Leora's small house. The stars were sharp and frost silvered the window edges. Ethan lay on the bed half asleep, while Mira curled beside him. Leora sat by the fire watching the flames move like little spirits. "You should rest," Ethan said quietly. "I rest enough," Leora replied. "The fire helps me think." "About what?" She smiled sadly. "About what I have lost, and what I have found again." Ethan shifted, wincing as the bandage pulled against his ribs. "You're brave," he said. "Most people would have left me to die." Leora shook her head. "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of doing nothing." "You risked everything," he said softly. "You stood against your own counsel." She turned her face toward the window. "I know what it feels like to be unwanted. When I was young, they told me no man would ever choose me because I could not walk. But when I saw you and Mira, I saw someone else who was left behind." Ethan's eyes softened. "You shouldn't believe what they said. You're stronger than anyone I've met," she gave a small laugh. "Strong? I can't even walk." "Strength isn't always in the legs," Ethan said. "Sometimes it's in the heart." The words made Leora's chest ache. No one had ever said something like that to her before. The fire crackled. Mira mumbled softly in her sleep, clutching her toy. Ethan watched her with quiet love. "She lost her mother 2 years ago," he said. "Since then, she's been afraid of being alone." Leora looked at the child. "Then she is like me," she whispered. "Afraid but still fighting to live." They sat in silence for a long time. The air was cold, but the space between them felt warm. Suddenly, Ethan spoke again. "When I fix my ship, I'll take you and Mira somewhere better. Somewhere without these cruel laws." Leora's heart skipped. "Ethan, don't promise that." He looked at her, his eyes bright in the firelight. "I keep my promises." Outside, the wind howled. Blue lights glimmered far in the night sky, patrol ships coming closer. "They'll come for you," Leora whispered. "Then I'll come back," he said firmly, "no matter what happens." She met his eyes, afraid and yet full of something new, hope. "Then I'll wait." As the cold night deepened and the stars burned above them, the human and the alien woman sat together in silence, two lonely souls bound by courage, and a promise that would soon shake both their worlds.